The Ferrari was red. Of course it was red. It sat in the center of the showroom floor of Prestige Auto Group on Meridian Avenue, like something that had been placed there specifically to make everyone else in the room feel the distance between themselves and it. The lighting above it was warm and deliberate, the kind of lighting that cost money to install and more money to maintain, and it fell across the car's hood in a way that made the paint look less like paint and more like something alive. The woman standing beside it was named Christine Harlow. She was 44 years old, dressed in a cream blazer over a silk blouse that had been pressed that morning by someone she paid to press things. She wore a single piece of jewelry, a watch that cost more than most cars in the pre-owned section of this very showroom, and she carried herself with the particular posture of someone who had never once in their adult life waited for anything that wasn't worth waiting for. She had arrived at Prestige Auto Group 40 minutes ago in a car that cost more than most people's houses, had dismissed the first two salespeople who approached her, and was currently on her third, a lean, eager man named Todd, who had understood within the first 90 seconds that his commission for the month was going to be decided in the next hour, and had adjusted his entire personality accordingly. He had not stopped smiling since. Christine was not looking at the Ferrari. She was looking at the man who had just walked through the front door. He was broad-shouldered, somewhere in his early 40s, with close-cropped hair and a face that had been shaped more by attention than by age. He wore a plain gray t-shirt, dark jeans, and clean white sneakers that had no logo visible from where she stood. He was holding the hand of a small girl, 7 years old, maybe 8, who was wearing a yellow raincoat despite the fact that it was not raining outside, and who was looking at the cars around her with the focused, serious attention of someone conducting an important inspection. The man looked around the showroom once, unhurried, the way someone looked at a room they had already decided they were comfortable in. Then he walked toward the row of vehicles along the east wall, the pre-owned section, the cars that started at $80,000 and went up from there, and crouched down beside a dark blue sedan to look at the wheel wells. Christine watched him for a moment. Something about his ease annoyed her, the ease of a man moving through a space that his clothing suggested he had no business being in, without any of the self-consciousness that his clothing suggested he should have. She turned back to Todd and said, loudly enough to carry across the showroom floor, "I don't understand how they let just anyone in here." Todd smiled the smile of a man who needed his commission and had decided that agreement was the safest available response. "Can I get you anything, Ms. Harlow? Still water? Espresso?" "I want to drive it today," Christine said, returning her attention to the Ferrari. "I want the full package, floor mats, extended warranty, the carbon fiber interior option." She glanced back at the man crouching by the sedan. "Some of us actually belong here." The girl in the yellow raincoat looked up at her father. He was still looking at the wheel wells. "Daddy," she said, "that lady is talking about us." "I know, baby," he said. He ran one hand along the lower edge of the doorframe, checking something only he could see. "What do you think of this one?" She considered the sedan with appropriate seriousness. She walked around the front of it, looked at the hood, pressed one small palm flat against the passenger window, and peered inside. "It's blue," she said finally. "I like blue." "Me too," he said. His name was Marcus Reed. He was 42 years old. He had a daughter named Lily who was 7 and who had strong opinions about the color blue and an absolute conviction that yellow raincoats were appropriate in all weather conditions, a position she had defended against his gentle suggestions on multiple occasions, and from which she had never once retreated. He drove a used Civic that had 114,000 miles on it and a heating system that worked on Tuesdays and Thursdays for reasons that no mechanic had ever been able to fully explain. The Civic smelled faintly of the crayons Lily kept in the backseat pocket and the coffee he drank on the way to school drop-off every morning. He had come to Prestige Auto Group on this particular Saturday morning because Lily had asked him 3 weeks ago whether they could get a new car. She had asked it the way she asked most things, directly, without preamble, in the tone of someone raising a reasonable point that deserved a reasonable answer. They had been in the Civic at the time, stopped at a red light, and the heating system had chosen that moment to produce a sound like a small animal in distress before returning to silence. "Daddy," Lily had said, looking at the dashboard with the expression she wore when she had fully assessed a situation and arrived at a conclusion. "I think we need a new car." He had thought about it for 3 weeks and decided she was right. He had not mentioned to anyone at Prestige Auto Group, or to anyone in the general vicinity of his Saturday morning life, that Marcus Reed was also the founder and sole owner of Reed Capital Ventures. The firm was 12 years old. It had started with one small technology investment made with money Marcus had saved over 5 years of working 18-hour days at a mid-sized investment bank while attending night school for his MBA. That investment had returned 11 times its value in 4 years. He had reinvested every dollar. He had done it again, and again, and again, with the specific, unhurried discipline of a man who understood that patience was not the absence of ambition, but the most powerful expression of it. Reed Capital Ventures currently had assets under management that placed it comfortably in the top tier of private equity firms in the country. It had made 43 investments. 38 had returned significant profit. 3 were ongoing. 2 had failed, and Marcus had examined each failure with the same careful attention he gave to the successes, because both contained information, and information was the only currency he had ever trusted completely. He owned 3 properties. He had a full-time staff of 14 people at the firm's offices downtown, plus a household staff he kept deliberately minimal because large households made him uncomfortable. He had accounts at 4 financial institutions. He gave a significant percentage of his annual income to a foundation he had established in Dana's name that funded early education programs in underserved communities. He owned a used Civic with a heating system that worked on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He owned it because Lily liked it, because it smelled like crayons, and because the kind of man he intended to be was the kind of man who drove his daughter to school in a car that smelled like crayons. The money was not something he had ever felt the need to display. It was a tool. Tools lived in workshops, not on lapels. He had not mentioned it this morning because it had never seemed necessary. He had learned a long time ago that the most honest way to enter a room was as yourself, without the things that were supposed to make people treat you correctly. If they treated you correctly anyway, you knew something real about them. If they didn't, you knew something real about them too, and the information was more valuable for not having been obscured. He was, at this moment, acquiring information. He stood from the sedan and moved to the next vehicle, a dark gray SUV, 2 years old, with the specific configuration of options he had been considering. He opened the driver's door and looked at the interior with the unhurried attention of a man who knew what he was looking at. A salesperson appeared beside him, not Todd, who was still attached to Christine Harlow and her Ferrari commission. This was a younger man, barely 25, with the slightly nervous energy of someone new to the floor and the careful tone of someone who had been taught exactly how to speak to customers and was applying the lesson without yet understanding it. "Can I help you, sir?" "I'm looking at this one," Marcus said, "and the blue sedan. What's the certified pre-owned warranty on both?" The young man told him. Marcus listened and asked 3 more questions, specific questions about the drivetrain warranty and the full service history. Questions that required the young man to look things up rather than answer from the standard script. And the young man answered them with increasing respect for the specificity and decreasing ability to conceal that he had underestimated the person he was talking to. Lily, meanwhile, had climbed partway into the blue sedan through the open door and was conducting a thorough assessment of the back seat. She opened and closed the rear cup holder 3 times. She pressed the window button. She examined the stitching on the headrest with the close attention of someone who had standards and intended to enforce them. From across the showroom, Christine Harlow was watching all of this. She had completed the paperwork on the Ferrari. Todd was processing it with the focused joy of a man whose month had just been saved, and she had a glass of sparkling water in her hand and time to spend, and she had been spending it watching the man in the gray t-shirt ask detailed questions about pre-owned vehicles with the ease of someone who actually knew what the answers meant. This annoyed her in a way she could not have fully explained. There was something in his stillness that was wrong. Wrong for what he appeared to be, wrong for the category she had assigned him on first glance. Men like that, in her experience, either tried too hard to belong in rooms like this or made themselves small. This one was doing neither. He was simply present, in the specific, unperformative way of someone who had never needed a room's permission to be in it. She decided to address it. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice carried easily. She had spent 20 years in rooms where carrying easily was a professional requirement. Several people in the showroom turned. "Are you actually going to buy something, or are you just here to look at things you can't afford?" Marcus looked up from the SUV's interior. He looked at her with the same expression he had worn since walking through the door. Calm, attentive, entirely unperturbed. "I'm deciding between two vehicles," he said. "Are you in a hurry?" "I'm in a hurry for the showroom to stop being treated like a petting zoo," Christine said. She set down her water glass with a small, precise click that communicated irritation without requiring volume. "You came in here with a child in a raincoat to look at pre-owned cars that are still 3 times what someone like you can afford. There's a Toyota dealership on 7th. I've driven past it. It looks very clean." Several people laughed. 2 salespeople near the back wall, both of whom had assessed Marcus on arrival and reached their own conclusions, let their laughter be audible. Todd, processing paperwork nearby, smiled at his desk without looking up. The showroom had shifted. The ambient sounds continued: air conditioning, a phone, the distant noise of the service bay. But the social atmosphere had changed the way it changed when a crowd understood that something was happening and had decided which side it was on. Lily had gone completely still inside the blue sedan. She was sitting in the back seat with her hands in her lap and her yellow raincoat around her, and she was looking at the woman who had just spoken through the car window with the expression she wore when she was doing serious and focused thinking. She was not crying. She was not frightened. She was 7 years old, and she had her father's specific quality of stillness when things required it. Marcus looked at Christine for a moment. He did not look at her the way people looked at someone who had just embarrassed them. There was no color in his face that shouldn't have been there, no tightening in his jaw, no readjustment of his posture into something defensive. He simply looked at her with the flat, patient attention of a man taking inventory. Then he looked at Lily. "Come here, baby," he said. Lily climbed out of the sedan and walked to him. He crouched down to her level, one hand on her shoulder, and said quietly enough that it was just for her, "You didn't do anything wrong. You understand that?" Lily looked at him steadily. "I know," she said. "She's being mean." "She is," he said. "What do you want to do?" Lily thought about this for one serious moment. "I want to see if the cup holders are better in the gray one," she said. Marcus almost smiled. "Let's do that," he said. He stood. He looked at Christine once more, a look that was not hostile and not wounded, and not any of the things she had perhaps been hoping for, just a clear and complete look, the look of a man who had seen exactly what he needed to see, and then he walked with Lily to the gray SUV and opened the rear door for her. Christine stared at his back. The laughter from the salespeople had subsided. The showroom had the particular quality of a room that has realized it may have miscalculated. "This is absurd," Christine said, to no one in particular. "Todd, Ms. Harlow." Todd materialized at her elbow. "Your car is fully processed. I can have it brought around." "I want this person asked to leave," Christine said. The edge in her voice had sharpened from performance into something genuine. "He is making this experience uncomfortable for paying customers, and I will not." The showroom manager appeared. His name was Gerald. He was heavy-set, somewhere in his mid-50s, with the groomed, professional appearance of a man who had spent 30 years in sales environments and had learned to navigate uncomfortable situations by calculating where the money was and moving toward it. He had been watching from his glass office at the back of the showroom and had made his calculation and had emerged. He approached Marcus with the careful tone of institutional authority being applied without pleasure. "Sir," Gerald said, "I want to thank you for visiting us today, but I think it might be best for everyone if—" "I'd like to buy the blue sedan," Marcus said. He said it without looking at Gerald. He was watching Lily test the cup holder in the back of the gray SUV. Her expression suggested it was acceptable, but not exceptional. Gerald stopped. "Sir, I was—" "Cash purchase," Marcus said. "Today. Full price. No negotiation on my end. I just need someone to confirm the service history is complete." He looked at Gerald then, directly and without hostility. "Can you do that? Or would you prefer I go elsewhere?" Gerald looked at Marcus. He looked at the gray t-shirt, the dark jeans, the white sneakers. He looked at Lily, who was now leaning forward from the back seat of the SUV to address him through the open door. "The cup holders in this one are smaller," Lily said to Gerald, with the seriousness of someone filing a formal complaint. Gerald looked at her. Then he looked back at Marcus. Then he looked at Christine Harlow, who was standing with her arms crossed, and the expression of a woman who was accustomed to being the most important person in any room she entered, and was waiting for the confirmation of that status. Gerald had been in sales for 30 years. He knew where the money was. He looked at Christine's Ferrari transaction. Processed, complete, already in the books. And he looked at the man in the gray t-shirt whose cash purchase was still pending, and he made his calculation. "I think," Gerald said slowly, "that given Ms. Harlow's concerns about the environment—" "Daddy," Lily said. Both men looked at her. She had climbed out of the SUV and was standing beside Marcus, one hand in his, looking up at him with the expression she wore when she had something important to say and was choosing her moment. "Can we call Mr. Thomas?" she said. Marcus looked at her. Something moved across his face, surprise, briefly, and then something warmer and more complicated than that. "You know about Mr. Thomas?" he said. "You called him about the Chicago office last week," Lily said. "I heard you from my room. You said he owed you a favor." She looked at him with the patient pragmatism of a 7-year-old who had done the math. "Does he?" Marcus looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he took out his phone. The call lasted 50 seconds. He said 4 sentences, listened for 15 seconds, and ended the call. He put the phone back in his pocket and stood with his hands loose at his sides and looked at no one in particular, simply waiting with the particular quality of patience that belonged to people who had learned that most situations resolved themselves if you gave them enough time and refused to be moved. Gerald was looking at him with an expression that had begun to change. The calculation he had made 30 seconds ago was being revised in real time, driven by something he couldn't name precisely: the quality of the call, the way Marcus had spoken, the specific, unhurried weight of a man who had called someone and knew with complete certainty that what he had asked for was already in motion. "Who did you call?" Gerald asked. "The owner of this dealership," Marcus said. "He'll be here in about 12 minutes. The showroom went quiet. Not the partial quiet of a moment ago, but a complete quiet. The kind that fell when a room understood that the ground it had been standing on was different from what it had believed. Christine Harlow uncrossed her arms. His name, as Robert Harcastle, the owner of Prestige Auto Group, explained to the assembled showroom floor 11 minutes later, after arriving in a car that attracted glances even in a room full of expensive cars, was Marcus Reed. Robert said it the way people said names when the name was supposed to land. And it landed. Reed Capital Ventures. The name that had appeared in the financial press 17 times in the past 18 months. The firm that had made the Caldwell technology acquisition that 3 industry publications had called the most elegant deal of the year. The name on the founding donation that had built the new wing of the Children's Medical Center downtown, the wing with the bright-colored walls and the murals of animals that Lily had helped choose during the consultation process because Marcus had brought her to every meeting where her opinion could be useful. Marcus Reed. standing in a gray t-shirt and dark jeans next to a 7-year-old in a yellow raincoat who was holding a small water bottle and looking around the room with the focused attention of someone who was learning things. Robert's gaze moved across the showroom floor with the careful, unhurried thoroughness of a man who had built this business from one location to 9 and understood that the culture of a showroom was determined not by its policies, but by what its people did when no one was watching. He looked at Todd, who had processed Christine's Ferrari, and laughed at his desk. He looked at the 2 salespeople near the back wall who had also laughed. He looked at Gerald, who had emerged from his office to ask a paying customer to leave. He looked at the young salesperson who had helped Marcus, the only person on the floor who had done his job without editorializing, and made a note of that, too. Then Robert looked at Christine Harlow. She was standing beside the Ferrari with both hands wrapped around the strap of her bag, and the composure she had walked in with, the absolute architectural certainty of someone who had never once been wrong about where she stood in a room, was doing something it had perhaps never done before. It was failing. Not dramatically, not all at once, but visibly, in the specific incremental way of a structure losing its integrity from the inside. She was looking at Marcus. Robert crossed the showroom floor to where Marcus was standing and shook his hand. "Marcus, I want to say in front of everyone here that I am sorry. This should not have happened." "I know," Marcus said. "You waited a long time to call me." "I wanted to see what the room did," Marcus said. When it thought no one important was watching, Robert absorbed this. He turned to face the showroom floor and its staff. "I want everyone who was on this floor this morning to stay," Robert said. His voice was even and quiet. "Gerald, Todd, everyone. I have some things to say, and I'd like to say them once." What followed was not a speech. Robert was not a speech-giving man. What it was a direct and undecorated accounting of what had happened that morning, said plainly in front of everyone, and what it meant for the standards of this dealership and what the consequences were going to be. He said it looking at the floor staff, not at Marcus, because the things he was saying were for them and needed to land there. Gerald was going to be placed on a formal performance review immediately. The commission structure for the morning's floor staff would reflect the outcome of that review. A mandatory customer dignity training program, one Robert had tried to implement 18 months ago and had let Gerald talk him out of, would begin the following week and would be non-negotiable going forward. Any staff member who could not commit to it was welcome to find other employment. Todd stared at his desk. The 2 salespeople near the back wall looked at the floor. The young salesperson who had helped Marcus looked at his hands. Robert finished. The room sat with it. Then Christine Harlow moved. She came forward from where she had been standing beside the Ferrari, and she came forward in the way that required something from her, not in the stride of a woman who owned rooms, but in the careful, deliberate step of someone who had decided that what came next was more important than how it looked. She stopped in front of Marcus. She was not wearing the expression she had arrived with. She was wearing the expression underneath it, the one that had always been there and that the other one had been constructed to conceal. It was smaller and less comfortable and considerably more honest. She looked at him for a moment without speaking. Then she lowered herself. Not partially, not the halfway gesture of someone performing contrition for an audience. She went to her knees on the showroom floor, in the cream blazer and the pressed silk blouse, in front of the man she had spent the morning trying to diminish, and she clasped her hands in her lap and looked up at him. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice was steady. She had decided to do this, and she was doing it with everything she had. "I owe you an apology that words are not going to be sufficient for. I looked at you, and I decided I knew everything about you before you had said a single thing. I used that assumption to hurt you. I used it to try to hurt your daughter." She paused. "I am sorry. Not because of who you turned out to be, because of who I was this morning." The showroom was completely silent. Lily was standing beside her father with her water bottle in one hand and her yellow raincoat, and she was looking at the woman on her knees on the showroom floor with the direct, unhurried gaze of a child who was seeing something she intended to remember. Marcus looked at Christine for a long moment. He was not performing mercy, and he was not performing hardness. He was reading what was actually there, the specific weight of a gesture that had cost something real, offered without guarantee of anything in return. "Stand up," he said quietly, not unkindly, the way you said it when you wanted someone to have their dignity back. Christine stood. She was steady. She had done what she came to do, and she was not going to fall apart having done it. "Thank you," Marcus said. 2 words, enough. He turned. He looked at Gerald, who was standing at the edge of the assembled staff with the expression of a man waiting for a door to close on him. "Gerald," Marcus said. Gerald straightened. "I've bought 4 cars from this dealership over the past 8 years, Marcus said, through my assistant, under the firm's name. Robert has the records." He paused. "I came in this morning as myself because I wanted to understand the experience of someone who walks in looking like me. Now I understand it." Gerald opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "I'm not going to tell Robert what to do with his staff," Marcus said. "That's his business. But I want you to hear from me directly, not from a policy, not from a training manual, that what you did this morning was a choice. You had information available to you. You chose what to do with it. That's on you." Gerald nodded. It was a small nod, stripped of everything except the basic acknowledgement that the words had landed where they were aimed. Marcus looked at the young salesperson, the one who had helped him, who had looked things up and answered questions without condescension, and had stood in the room while his colleagues laughed without laughing himself. "What's your name?" Marcus said. The young man straightened. "James, sir." "James." Marcus looked at him steadily. "You did your job this morning, that's worth saying." James nodded. His expression had the quality of someone receiving something they were not sure they had earned and were going to think about later, carefully, alone. Robert was watching all of this with the expression of a man watching his showroom become something it had not been when the morning started, and understanding that what was happening was not a crisis but a correction, and that the correction was going to cost him something in the short term, and return more than that in the long term, and that a man like Marcus Reed had understood this before walking through the door. They did the paperwork in Robert's office. Lily sat in the chair across from Robert's desk, with her water bottle and her yellow raincoat and her assessment of the cup holders in both vehicles, which she delivered in full. Robert listened to both assessments with complete attention and agreed that cup holder quality was an underrated factor in vehicle selection. The car was blue. The cup holders passed final inspection. The certified pre-owned warranty covered everything relevant. Marcus signed the documents with the unhurried attention he brought to all things. He did not negotiate the price because the price was fair, and he had never seen the point of negotiating a fair price. Robert shook his hand when it was done. The handshake had the gravity of 2 men who understood that something beyond a car transaction had occurred that morning. "Marcus," Robert said before they reached the door, "I want to ask you something." Marcus turned. "Why here?" Robert said. "You could have bought any car from any dealer in the city. With a call from your office, someone would have delivered anything you wanted to your door. Why come in here like this?" Marcus thought about the question honestly, the way he thought about most things. "My father drove a '94 Buick for 19 years, he said. "He kept it clean. He was proud of it. He saved up to have it detailed twice a year." He paused. "Once, when I was about Lily's age, we went to look at a new car, a dealership not far from where we lived. The salesman looked at my father and my father's Buick and walked past us to help someone else." He looked at Robert steadily. "My father drove the '94 Buick for 5 more years after that. He never went back." Robert was quiet. "I have a daughter," Marcus said. "She's watching how I move through the world. She's learning what to expect from it and how to carry herself inside it." He glanced back at Lily, who was examining a framed photo on Robert's wall with focused curiosity. "I wanted her to see what this felt like, and I wanted to see what you were made of." He said it without accusation and without warmth, in the plain declarative way of someone stating a fact about the world that they have verified and are now logging. Robert absorbed this. He looked at Lily. He looked at Marcus. "What am I made of?" he asked. Marcus looked at him for a moment. "I don't know yet," he said. "Ask me in a year." The blue sedan was waiting in the delivery bay when they came out. It was clean and solid and exactly the right shade of blue, the shade that Lily had identified from 6 feet away as correct without being able to explain why, and Marcus trusted her judgment on this the way he trusted her judgment on most things, completely, without reservation, because she had never given him a reason not to. She went immediately to the rear door, opened it, and performed one final assessment of the cup holder. She placed her water bottle in it. She looked at it from 3 angles. She removed the water bottle and replaced it with deliberate care. "Daddy," she said. "Yeah?" "This one is good." "I'm glad," he said. She climbed in. She buckled her seatbelt with the specific clicking sound of someone completing an important task. She looked out the window at the showroom entrance, where Robert was standing at the glass, watching them. "Is that man going to be better now?" Lily asked. Marcus started the car. The engine was quiet and clean, and completely without the sound of a small animal in distress. "I think he's going to try," he said. Lily considered this. What about the lady? Marcus thought about Christine Harlow on her knees on the showroom floor, in the cream blazer, looking up at him with the honest and undecorated expression of someone who had taken full account of what they had done. "I think she already started," he said. Lily nodded once, the decisive nod of someone who has received information and filed it in the right place. She looked out the window at the Saturday morning streets. "Can we get breakfast?" she said. "We can get breakfast," he said. "Pancakes?" "Pancakes." She settled back in her seat with the particular satisfaction of someone whose morning has gone exactly right. The cup holder held her water bottle without effort. The heating system came on smooth and even, warm in all directions. They drove out of the delivery bay and into the Saturday traffic, and the city was doing what cities did on Saturday mornings, opening up, slowing down, filling with people and noise and the ordinary beautiful complication of everyone moving through their lives at once. Marcus drove. Lily told him about a drawing she planned to make when they got home. A car, blue, with a sun above it, and a small figure in the driver's seat, and a smaller figure in the back. She was going to label the smaller figure me, she said, and the driver. She thought about it for a moment, with appropriate seriousness. "Daddy," she said. "Obviously." Marcus drove through streets that did not know his name, and that was exactly the way he wanted it. And the car was blue, and the cup holders were right, and his daughter was in the back seat planning a drawing. That was the whole of it. That was, in every way that mattered, everything. The most powerful thing a person can do is walk into a room without needing it to know who they are. And the most honest thing a room can do is treat them well anyway. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. More stories like this one are coming, and they deserve to be heard.